Wedding Bells Ahead by Arleta Richardson. Chapter 8. The Tempest Breaks. I was putting lessons on the board Monday morning when I became aware that a heated argument was taking place outside my window. With a sigh, I put the chalk down and went out to see what the problem was. Elizabeth Lawton and Edward Alexander were standing toe to toe.
"That's a lie!"
Edward shouted.
"Don't you call my pa a liar!"
Julianne bellowed, giving Edward a push. To my surprise, the usually mild-mannered Edward grabbed Julianne by the hair. At that point, George Eliot took one child in each hand and held them at arm's length. Julianne was red-faced with anger, and Edward was crying with rage.
"I thought I'd better separate them before they killed each other,"
George said.
"Thank you, George. What in the world started all this?"
"Her pa said that my pa started the fire in the school, and that's a lie,"
Edward shouted.
"A great big lie!"
"'Tis not,"
Julianne retorted.
"My pa knows, 'cause he saw your pa running away from the school." "This is not the way to prove anything,"
I said firmly.
"Both of you go sit on the steps until you cool off. We'll talk about this later."
I had hoped to uncover interesting facts about the school and community, not dig up old resentments and rumors. When the bell rang, everyone filed in quietly. After the opening exercises, the children waited expectantly for me to say something about the morning's unusual beginning.
"We want to have a centennial pageant,"
I said,
"but not if people are going to be hurt because of it. I think we should have some rules about the kinds of things that will be included. What do we want to know about the school?"
"Who came here?"
Jamie suggested.
"Who all the teachers were,"
Prudence offered.
"and maybe which ones stayed the longest."
Many other ideas were expressed, and then I said,
"All right. These are facts people in the valley may remember. There are a lot of stories connected with the school that will not injure anyone's reputation if they are repeated. These are what we want to hear." "But the school did burn,"
Carrie pointed out.
"That's true," I replied, "and the fact can be included, but no one was ever proven responsible according to the school records, and we'll leave it at that. We'll report only what we know."
"My pa knows,"
Julianne muttered, and Edward glared at her.
"Julianne," I said sternly, "we have heard the last word on this subject. Do you understand?"
She nodded reluctantly, and we went on to other things. I kept an eye on the two combatants the rest of the day, but they stayed a reasonable distance apart. As soon as school was dismissed, I made my way over to see Mrs. Williams. "I'm not surprised," she said when I related the story. "There's not been any love lost between the Alexanders and Cy Lawton since he arrived here. As I recall, the Lawtons came along during the winter of '74 when Elizabeth was about 5. Cyrus wanted her to go into the first grade, but Philip Alexander, Edward's grandfather, was president of the school board, and he ruled that Elizabeth should stay in the beginner's class the rest of the year. Apparently, Cy has held that against the Alexanders all these years."
"You think he made up the story to discredit the family?"
"It wouldn't surprise me. Our girls were in school with Paul Alexander. He was one of the nicest boys in school. Quiet and easygoing, just like Edward is. Certainly not the type to burn down the schoolhouse."
"Oh, I thought we were headed for another civil war,"
I sighed.
"I was tempted to quit the whole project."
Every community has its little rumors and intrigues, especially when families have been part of it for 100 years, Mrs. Williams said. When people start searching their memories, they're bound to come to mind.
"Well, I hope I'm not sorry we started this."
I rose to leave.
"What time do you expect Len?"
"I think they were planning to spend the day," Mrs. Williams replied. "It will probably be well after dark before they get here." I went home to find Augusta surveying her well-filled woodshed with satisfaction.
"Who would have believed that one tree would have that much firewood?"
she marveled. I sent a load to the Romanis, and Hiram took a bunch of kindling. There's still enough here to keep us going far into the winter."
"I see they got the well house back up,"
I remarked.
"Was it damaged too much?"
"Not at all. When Pa put something together, he meant it to stay that way until the end of time. Hiram just had to push it up straight and seal the bottom. This place will outlast all of us."
"I certainly hope so,"
I thought, and went to work on my lessons. I had not had time to hang up my coat the following day when Mrs. Williams hurried into the classroom. "Mabel, has Len been here this morning?" she asked.
"Why, no,"
I answered.
"I just this minute got here. Didn't he come home last night?"
"No, he didn't, but Regal did."
"You mean the horse came home alone?"
I gasped. She nodded. "Pa found him in his stall this morning. There was no sign of the buggy or Len. Pa's going to set out looking for him if you haven't seen him. Oh dear, I hope there hasn't been an accident." She hurried out and I stared after her in shock. I couldn't leave the children unattended, nor would I be any help in searching for Len. I would have to carry on until news came. When the children arrived, I went out to speak to the Graysons.
"Did your father come home last night, Serena?"
I asked. "No, ma'am," she replied. "He didn't intend to. He took the train to Riverdale to meet someone, and he'll be home later today."
Elizabeth didn't come home neither,
Julianne put in.
"What does that have to do with anything?"
I snapped. I was tired of hearing Julianne's reports from home. I was terribly worried about Len.
"She was with them,"
Julianne stated.
"She's on vacation from her job this week, and Pa's awful upset because they didn't get back."
Carrie scowled at her, but Julianne continued undaunted.
"Pa says he'll have a word with that young man. He'll probably make Mr. Williams marry Elizabeth."
I could understand why Edward had been ready to snatch this child bald.
"That's enough, Julianne. Everyone line up to come inside, please."
I walked stiffly into the schoolroom and rang the bell for the opening of the day. After assigning the morning lessons and enlisting Prudence and Elsie to hear the little ones read, I hovered near the window where I could watch the road. Len must have known Sunday night that Elizabeth was going to the county seat with them. Why hadn't he told me? And what had she gone for? If Jerome Grayson had gone someplace else, that meant Len and Elizabeth would travel back alone. But where were they now? How could Len have done this? Serena's voice broke into my whirling thoughts.
"Miss O'Dell, I think it's time for recess."
I slowly brought her into focus and nodded.
"All right. Go."
The children rose quietly, casting sidelong glances at me as they filed out. I had to pull myself together and live out this day. Before evening, I realized, everyone in North Branch would know that Leonard Williams and Elizabeth Lawton had left together yesterday and had not yet returned. I forced myself to push the matter out of my mind and concentrate on schoolwork. I would not go near that window again. Recess over, the children came back in. We proceeded at once with a scheduled spell down, and they seemed relieved to see that I was paying attention to them. I even joined in the laughter when Hannah spelled believe, Beleave. But my heart was definitely not in it. Shortly before noontime, Len came driving into the schoolyard, alone. I dismissed the children for dinner, and they grabbed their lunch pails and sidled past him in the doorway. Julianne threw a smug look in my direction, and I clutched my chair to keep from going after her. I had never disliked a child in my life, but I was coming mighty close to losing what little affection I had for this one. I stood still as Len approached the desk.
"I was concerned about you,"
I said evenly. "I know. I'm sorry. Regal got loose. I had to wait until this morning to hire a horse. There was no way to let you or Ma know what had happened." I watched as he awkwardly shifted his hat from hand to hand. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Do you want to know what we found?"
"Of course."
"The property was in John Harris's name, and there is a witnessed will on file. That means the Gages and Augusta will have to be told." I made no reply, and Len watched me warily. Aren't you going to say something?
Len, why didn't you tell me that Elizabeth Lawton was going with you?
He looked uncomfortable. I know how you feel about Elizabeth, he said timidly. I didn't think you'd want to know.
You mean you thought I wouldn't find out? How many other things are you planning to keep from me?
I don't intend to keep anything.
Never mind,
I interrupted.
You were right. I don't want to know.
I walked past him and out to the schoolyard, leaving Len to see himself to the door. End of chapter 8.